What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going over deadlift. Before we get into that, I'd like to say thank you to all the new subscribers and all the likes we got on the previous video, which was a bench press video, which everybody loves bench press. So greatly appreciate all the new subscribers and all the likes. We gained a little over 100 subscribers from the last video, and that really helps me strive to produce more content. So greatly appreciated. So today I'm talking about deadlift, a movement I have struggled with for years. And the reason I've struggled with it is incorrect posture and a lack of core stabilization. So when I say lack of core stabilization, I actually mean the local core muscles that help stabilize the spine during movement. And we'll get into that and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So deadlift, it's a bit of a complex movement, but it's not hard to get strong at once you learn how to deadlift properly. So like I said, I myself had trouble for years deadlifting to the point, and it was so bad that it got to the point where I had quit deadlifting for a while. And that was due to low back pain every time I deadlifted, high hip pain every time I deadlifted. And like I said, the reason for that was bad posture or bad form and a lack of core stabilization. So, getting at what is a deadlift? A deadlift is a hinge movement. And if you don't know what a hinge is, this is me demonstrating a hinge. And a hinge is basically when you're driving your hips back while keeping your back straight. And to a degree, keeping your legs straight. The only thing that's moving is your hips. And the farther you drive back the hips, the more forward or bent over your torso is, or your torso bends over. Your torso bends over because your hips are being driven back. And that's what a hinge is. And I didn't know how to do that properly. Nobody had told me how to do that properly. I looked up videos on YouTube and they really didn't describe that movement. They just showed you how to deadlift. So I'm going to tell you about the hinge. Or I'm describing to you what a hinge is and how important it is to hinge when you deadlift. Because that's what deadlift is a hinge movement. So once I learned that to initiate a deadlift or to get in a starting position for a deadlift, that I must hinge or drive my hips back to get into the starting position, it made things a lot easier. And that's when you're hinging back like that, you're engaging your posterior chain. I mean, in your hamstrings, your hips, and we'll get into the lats and the calves a little bit later. But you start off engaging your posterior chain by hinging back. So first thing I got right was my form. Learn how to hinge back correctly. The second thing I had to learn was how to create good core stabilization. And believe it or not, just because you have abs does not mean you have a strong core or you have good core stabilization. Doesn't mean anything. It just means you're skinny and got a couple muscles poking out. That's all it means. But good core strength and good core stabilization, you have to work on that. And I did not work on that, or I was not working on that for years until ended up when I became a certified personal trainer and learned how to work on core stabilization. And there's a few exercises, or a lot of exercises, that you can do to work on core stabilization, but I like to do 2 before every workout. For every workout, I like to do 2 exercises, and those are planks and side planks. Planks force your core muscles, or the stabilizing core muscles to work. And once you get down into a plank position, you will actually feel your core working to stabilize your body in that upright or in that position. And when I say your core stabilizing muscles, what I mean is the muscles that attach at the lumbar part of your spine that help stabilize your spine. When people think of the core, they think of just the muscles of the rectus abdominis, which creates the 6 or 8 pack. But your core muscles actually are, you have core muscles that attach to the spine, and then you have core muscles that attach at the hip. The core muscles that attach at the spine are the ones that help stabilize the spine. And when you're doing a plank or side plank, that's what they're doing, is helping to stabilize the spine. And you'll feel it around the stomach area, because the transverse abdominis, which is worked during a plank or side plank, it actually connects at your spine and wraps around towards the front of your stomach. And when you're doing that plank and side plank, it forces that transverse abdominis to really work at stabilizing the core. And I usually do 3 sets of these, 30-second holds on each one. And by that time, my core is primed and ready to go, and with any movement that I do. If you can't do a plank or side plank, then there are other core exercises, core stabilizing exercises that you can do. One is fairly easy, but it's tough, and it's one that I would start off with if you can't do a plank, and it's called a drawing in maneuver. It's basically when you lay down and you bend your knees with your feet on the ground, and you move your navel towards your spine and hold it for 10 seconds, doing about 10 reps of these, and you'll really feel your stabilizing muscles working there. And you're not taking in a breath to force that navel towards your spine. You're physically moving the navel. You're physically moving the navel towards your spine, holding it for 10 seconds, 10 reps of that. Another core stabilizing exercise that people overlook is marching. And marching is fairly easy. I trained a client, or I'm training a client, and when that client first started out, they could not do a plank or a side plank, and we started off with marching for about 10 yards forward and 10 yards back for about 3 sets. After about a month and a half, that client was able to do a plank. She was able to build up enough core stabilization and strength to where she could actually do a plank and hold it for 30 seconds. So make sure you're doing your core work, core stabilizing work, to help equip you to better work through all your compound movements, especially with deadlift and especially with squat. So we got our posture right, we got our form right as far as the hinge, and then we got our core stabilizing exercises in there to help build up our core. And since I've started that, I've seen that my deadlift, I don't have any more low back pain. I don't have too much high hip pain. If I do have hip pain, it's because my hips are out of alignment, and that's just, I'm old. I'm 34. Okay, give me a break. So once a month I have to go get an adjustment to get my hips back right. So once I started this, or like I said, hinging correctly, core stabilization, no more back pain, not as much hip pain, and I've been able to gradually go up on my, gradually increase my strength on my deadlift. In the last year and a half, went from deadlifting 405 to 570, and it was, one reason was because I was able to do the movement correctly. Another reason was because of my the exercises I was performing, or the sets and reps I was performing. And within these last couple of 8 weeks, or these last few weeks, going up to 8 weeks, I've been doing 5 sets of 5. And it's, like I said, there's no secret to becoming stronger deadlift once you get your form right, and once you get, you realize that you need to be working on your core muscles. There's really no secret at becoming strong at deadlift. You just got to do it. And deadlift is a taxing movement. It's full posterior chain movement, where you're using every bit of your posterior chain to move that weight, and it's very taxing. So when I say 5 sets of 5, the way I perform it is with a weight that I can move relatively fast. And the reason for that is not only building up strength, but you're building up the ability to move that weight fast. And you want to be able to move it fast. The faster you can get that weight off the ground, the faster you can get it up, the faster you can complete the rep. Easier said than done, right? So let's go into the movement itself. Well, let's go into my sets and my reps. So here I am doing 405 after I've warmed up, and 405 is a weight that I can move relatively fast at the start. After around the 4th or 5th set, it's moving a little bit slower. And one of the reasons is because the way I'm doing these reps. So, seeing a lot of people when they deadlift, they are using the momentum from after each rep to help get that weight back up. What I mean is they're almost bouncing the weight. So they rep out the weight, that first rep, and when they come back down with no hesitation or no gap in between from one rep to the next, they kind of bounce that weight up. I don't want to say bounce, but it's that's what it's basically, it sounds like. It's using the momentum in the movement itself to get that next rep. The way I do it is, after one rep and you bring the weight back down, you wait a second or two. Get back in your correct form, or get back in the correct posture, basically resetting, and do the next rep. And you do that for 5 reps for 5 sets. And that is how I've become stronger in the last year and a half with my deadlift. And this is the strength portion of the program. So yeah, like I said, there's really no secret to deadlift besides deadlifting itself. But while doing these, like I said, resting in between, well, not resting, when you stop in between each rep and reset, and then do the next, or perform the next lift, it becomes, like I said, very taxing on the body, but it requires you to perform the rep, I don't want to say perfectly, but correctly, every rep. And by doing that, you prevent yourself from getting injured, as long as you're doing it correctly, and you teach yourself to lift or rep every rep near about the same every single time. And the goal is to be able to move that weight with speed. The faster you can get that weight up, the faster you can complete the rep. Now, after these 5 sets of 5, you're tired. Your posterior chain is fried. You're sweating like a male hog or a prostitute in church, because it's, like I said, it's very taxing. So usually I'm only performing 1 or 2 accessory lifts for this. Usually it's just one, and that one lift can either be a stiff-legged deadlift or a Romanian deadlift, RDL. And I prefer the RDLs more than the stiff legs. And the RDLs, I'm usually using anywhere from half the weight to 3/4 of the weight. And RDLs are just complementing the deadlift. And it's more along the lines of you're still working on your posterior chain, mainly your hamstrings and your glutes. So doing RDLs, after doing 5 sets of 5, RDLs are tough on me. There's times that I can do 315 for sets of 8. There's times that I can only do 225 for sets of 8, because I'm losing grip strength and my hamstrings are tortured. So, like I said, only 1 to 2 accessories. If I do anything else, it's going to be hamstring curls, and hamstring curls strictly for hypertrophy purposes. And that's pretty much it. Well, of course, I got to throw in my calf raises, because we all know my calves are non-existent. So, still working on that. But that's basically it when it comes to deadlift. That's basically it. Like I said, there's no big secret becoming stronger in deadlift besides actually doing the movement properly. Now, like I said, it is a very taxing movement on the posterior chain, and for me, it usually takes about 10 days for my body to fully recover from a heavy deadlift session. Usually about 10 days. So I only deadlift once every 2 weeks or once every 10 days. And I found that works best for me. I've actually tried deadlifting once every week, and I'm not going to say I lost strength, but I could not move the weight like I could if I performed it every 10 days or 2 weeks. At one point I was doing, or I could do, if I was doing like a 1 rep max, I noticed that 500 was hard to pull if I done deadlift every week. If I rested and let my posterior chain rest and performed deadlift once every 2 weeks, then 500 would fly right on up. Now, if you're having a hard time learning how to set up correctly for deadlift, then what better way to show you than when I pulled 570 pounds. So when you initially start the lift, you're going to find your stance. And what I've heard, or what I found works best for me as far as finding how far apart my feet should be, is to close your eyes, perform a jump, a slight jump, and wherever your feet land, that's about how far apart your feet should be for a conventional deadlift. And true to this day, that has worked for me. Because it is a natural stance for you. Now this is for conventional deadlift, not sumo. Sumo, I don't do sumo. It's not. Sumo has its place in everybody's program. I'll use it to warm up for a squat, but I prefer conventional because we just prefer conventional. Anyway, once you have your stance down pat, you want the bar in the starting position to to be right above the middle of your feet. At the starting position, the middle of your feet. From there, take a couple of deep breaths, and go ahead and brace your core before you hinge back. You brace your core, you hinge back, and while you hinge back, you slightly bend your knees to the point where your shins are parallel with your quads or your femur. Once your shins are straight and parallel with your quads and femur, you grab the bar right on the outside of your knees. Right on the outside. You don't want it too far apart. The closer your hands are to your body, the more strength you have. The closer your hands are, or your arms or limbs are to your body, the stronger you are, more strength you have. So bring those hands right there beside the knee, grab the bar. You can do a double overhand grip or one over, one under, whichever one you prefer. But when you train, make sure you train in that way, one over, one under, or double hand. And once you grab the bar, take another couple deep breaths. And get ready to brace your core again. Once you brace your core again, what you want to do is sit back in that position. And while you sit back, the bar is going to come forward towards your shins. Once you get it towards your shins, this is where your bar perhaps going right up on your shins. You press down with your heels. Press down with your heels or your feet and pull the slack out of the bar. This is all in one motion. And you'll sit back, plant down with your feet, pull the slack out of the bar, and what you will feel is your calves engage, your hamstrings engage, and your glutes engage, and your lats engage, all at one time once you pull that slack out of the bar. And then you begin the movement by trying to drive your feet through the ground while pulling the bar up. Drive your feet through the ground while trying to pull the bar up. And you'll see in that 570-pound lift that I perform, that is what I've done. Now, I used to have a issue to where I would lean forward when I pulled on my initial pull, and that's because I didn't take slack out of the bar and I did not sit back into the movement. And then I was using more of my lats to pull and my lats to pull more than anything. Using my lats to pull more than what they should have been. I was using my lats for doing more than what they should have been doing. It's posterior chain movement, but your hamstrings and glutes should be the prime movers. Hamstrings and glutes, prime movers. Anyway, greatly appreciate you checking out the channel, watching the video. There's more videos in my repertoire if you would like to go and check them out. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Until next time, Strawberry Fitness.